Live and direct. Go!
This is Guest List Plus One, live.
You're listening to Guest List Plus One, live, where music meets technology and Web3. Join us and explore how we can change music.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much. I'll take that applause. Come on, let's rev up the crowd a little bit. There we go. We got Artem. There's a reason you're here, buddy. All right, guys, thank you so much, everybody, for coming for the very first Guest List Plus One live. And thank you to both of you guys. I mean, huge inspirations to me. I come from the dance music world, for those of you who don't know, before founding MuFi with Spencer. But Danny, you've been an artist I've looked up to for years and years.
Thank you.
In fact, I've still been playing your Push Can remix from Tomorrow Winters
Nice.
pretty regularly in my sets for the last decade. So thank you for that. And then, David, we've had a chance to kind of explore Beatport's tech and forward-thinking nature within the music industry and the Web3 industry for, I would say, on and off for the last 3 months, correct?
About that, yeah.
Yeah, so we've had a chance to converse and kind of see where Beatport is pushing itself as a platform. So we're happy to bring this to you guys here today live. If you guys wouldn't mind, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourselves and what your involvement is with the Web3 community?
I'm Dan. I've been DJing for 26 years. Started making music in 2001, and in 2011, I got into Bitcoin by mistake. I was buying stolen studio equipment from, I assume it was, but yeah, I got into BTC basically in 2011, and it led me to this, to just digging deeper.
I mean, if there's a better use case for
Yeah.
for Bitcoin, I think at this point it's the depreciating value of synthesizers. But hopefully you still have them, right?
Not the BTC. I have the synthesizers, and I hate it.
You know what? For guys like us, fair trade,
I want to
right?
blow it up with a torch. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, I guess I've sort of, whenever I first got into music was post-university. I did an arts degree, which was completely useless. And then
A little bird told
left
me you
that-
might be doing some producing too.
well, not in English literature and French, right? But yeah, so at the end of that, then I was like, okay, I'm just going to follow a passion. So at that time, I hope there's no unpaid internships still around. But at that time, I just did a bunch of unpaid internships. So I did everything and anything. So I worked at Soma Records. I think in the last panel you mentioned Daft Punk. They put out that. I worked at the label that put out Daft Punk's first track.
Oh, beautiful.
And then I went to Berlin. So I was in Scotland, then I went to Berlin, and then I worked on press for Berghain, which is a big club there. And then,
If you know, you know.
and then did like press and that side of things on 12 inches and lots of underground stuff until, a couple of years ago when I joined Beatport. So about 5 years ago. And yeah, I mean, I'm actually really, I don't know, I think Rob, the CEO, is just a really innovative, forward-thinking guy. He loves crypto, and he loves what the potential is here, and that kind of white space to explore, experiment, and with the permission to fail. So in that, then our team was kind of handed off, go explore Web3.
See how we could change the music industry.
See what we can do and see what comes from it. And it was, I think as with any kind of startup type project, the uncertainty is real. And the hype was real.
The hype is real.
So I've a long-winded set way to say I've done a bunch of stuff in music and then ended up experimenting in this space.
Perfect. I mean, I think it's both of your forward-thinking natures that made you guys perfect guests, and that we sought you guys out. We were able to get you on today's panel with no problems. I mean, again, thank you guys both for being here. And I just want to chip away at the ice. So, David, what's your favorite mispronunciation of a word in English, in American English? Come on, give that to me.
I actually had to think about this for quite a long time, but then it was like struck me like a piece of
hit you.
gold. It's aluminum. 100%.
Aluminum.
It's not even the word.
Fair enough.
It's aluminium. IUM, not aluminum.
Well, you can't fault us, you know, for having one less
it's,
syllable.
It's one against the room of Americans.
Is there an
so
extra I in there?
Yeah, we
It's like
added-
an extra
we had
consonant,
the
an
I.
extra I.
We
Yeah,
had the
umlaut,
I.
I think.
So that's my vote.
That's yours. All right, so Danny, then what's your favorite curse word?
Favorite curse word would be in Spanish. I'm Cuban, so
Okay.
it'd be coño.
Coño?
Yeah, coño. Yeah.
My
Coño,
partner
but,
appreciates
like,
that one.
Cubans say ño. Like we leave the first
Is
two
it with
letters
an
out, and
ñ?
you can use it for anything. Like if you stub your foot, you can say ño. Or if you just saw a hot chick walking down the road, ño.
Ño.
Like, yeah.
I know in Mexican we have a no mames for
No mames.
for a little bit of
Yeah.
everything. So
Yeah.
I could relate to that one a little bit.
Word.
All right, Danny, first question for you. I read in a really good DJ Mag article that you're a hater, right? And you'll know how to make friends because you will hate the same things as you. So what could we sit here today, right? Again, we have the easy part of the conversation.
Yeah.
We're not the tech people. We could sit back and say how it's changing our lives. But from the music perspective, what do we hate about the crypto world that maybe hasn't come to fruition or was promised us as artists and DJs and musicians?
I think the DJing aspect, right? Like everything is price action based, from NFTs to meme coins to everybody just wanting to make money. There's something in this technology that's actually real that can last forever, and it will. But we're in this space now where absolute morons are coming in just to try and jump into the meme coin world because they just want to make money. While, I look at it as a thing that check 1 2, a technology that's actually going to last for a long time. Whether it is NFT based. For me, when it comes to the music side of things, the NFT world is definitely something that we need to dig deeper into.
Hello. Okay, we still got it. Yeah, exactly. It's like a lot of people flooded into the space to basically make cash, make money, flip NFTs. Like we have JPEGs going around for millions of dollars. But I think you and I saw the same thing in the space, right? This could be digital ownership. This can track my music and my plays around the world, whether it be in a DJ set, whether it be, through your platform, David, through streaming services. There's a lot of potential in that back-end architecture. So I guess that leads me to my next question. Now that the NFT hype has kind of died down a little bit and we see the utility behind it, where do you think, David, the Beatport is kind of taking that underlying tech and running with it and providing more value back into artists?
Yeah, it's a good question. Just on the topic of the NFT side and getting in at that time, I think you could. There's a lens where you could look at what we did at the time as jumping on the bandwagon, because I don't know. Well, I'm sure most people in this room got swept up by it. We were certainly really interested by it, but I think the flaw to date, to some extent, has been like a real utopic vision for it, right? So it's like, but this is gonna make the world better, and it's gonna like change everything
Overnight.
And that optimism it's no surprise that optimism came off and during a time of like global crisis where we were in a pandemic, right? So I think that the sort of melting pot of that time was look, I'm glad we threw our hat in the ring. I'm glad we've started down this path, but I don't have all the answers in terms of how that plays out. But I think that's now where it goes from here is I think that Rob had some really good points, and the panel just before had some really good points, which I thought was interesting because they were coming from a tech mindset, like a pure or more pure tech mindset. But the points that they kind of highlighted were essentially points that we actually now understand as the areas of opportunity, and that's adoption and I don't really love the word utility, but actually making something that helps people.
It's usable. That actually
It's
drives
usable,
the industry.
But it's also like, you know, if I told a DJ, hey, I'm going to put your music on chain, like they do not give a fuck about like on chain. Like,
Until they understand.
It's hard until they understand. Well, until they understand. But do they need to understand that? Like they talked about abstraction beforehand, and abstracting away the obscurity of it all is actually like makes way more sense. So I think whatever the next step for us is, I don't think it is NFTs necessarily. It might play a role in terms of tokenization. I think tokenization is interesting, like a sync and licensing perspective, and maybe on the royalty side. We just did a documentary last year on King Street Sounds. It's like a 90s house label.
Oh, everything,
from New York,
very
you know.
familiar.
And I had to go through the painful process of actually clearing the tracks in that documentary. So getting permission or paying the rights holders. And that industry is like so complex, and no one, like trying to find out who owns the rights for this, who had like publishing rights.
It's changed hands 10 times since then.
And I did the same thing for some of the clips and video footage, because we had old New York footage from the 90s that we obviously didn't record, so we have to license that. And I think that world is like primed, and please someone disrupt it, because the current systems are a fucking nightmare.
Absolute nightmare. I mean, how are you going to trace back? Where's the paperwork for the original Jonic EP that came out in '94 that no one has? Well, Danny, what's your perspective on that? I mean, as far as the rights being changed.
I do think NFTs are actually something that should be coming back pretty hard when it comes to this and following the ledger. And the biggest thing for me is for things like ASCAP, BMI, Gemma, Web3 speaking to the Web2 world in order to back catalog everything and then bring everything into the Web3 world. I think a lot of AI oracles are going to be bringing this into fruition. That's I think it's extremely important for all those worlds to connect.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've had a look at, you know, the ASCAP ACE repertoire. I've looked at the PPL, you know, front to back to see where it is. And it's one, it's a goddamn mess. Two, it's not necessarily traced back to you as an identity. And three, no one gets it right. And what people don't know about royalties, it's in our hands as artists to put this information up with the right societies. But if we could have a cleaner system where this is actually digitally tracked. I heard you mention DIDs before, decentralized IDs. I mean, that'll fall, I think, very heavily into this, where you could verify your Danny Daze, this is your track, it was played here.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, Web3 is going to have to speak to Web2 at some point. I think a lot of us tend to keep it very nearsighted, where it's Web3 talking to Web3. ASCAP, BMI, and all these things, and Beatport are gonna have to, at some point, if we do want this euphoric way that we're looking at things to actually work, there's gonna have to be an underlying technology that does connect everything. And it goes back to making Michael Jackson tracks NFTs. And that was played at this point here, and this is gonna get paid out at a certain point. I'm not a dev. I wish I had those dev brains, but I do understand that that's eventually where we're going to get to.
I agree with that. I think considering larger records like that too, a Michael Jackson track could have 20, 30 people on there.
Yeah.
And what will happen is if one person isn't claimed or puts in, you know, a claim on the track and they weren't listed, it'll get held up for the rest of the people to actually collect the royalties.
I would just jump in on that. I think the major issue is actually the major label, right? So if you crack that nut, then yeah. But like this whole archaic system of how things are tracked and rights holder management is like so deeply ingrained, and the vast majority of wealth is owned by Universal, Sony,
Warner.
You know, yeah. So like if they don't get on board, you're kind of fucked. And yeah,
I mean, it's true. And
or you do something from the very bottom and start from scratch I think like Sound XYZ is maybe a good example of this, like doing a very grassroots level thing. And then if an artist kicks off from that, hey, guess what? It's not actually on a major label, so fuck you.
Well,
You
that
know,
was going to
but-
be my next suggestion. I mean, Danny, you've been running Omnidisc for how many years now?
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you do digital releases, but you also still print vinyl, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, if we look at it from the root source, which would be your artist or, you know, the actual vinyl that you release, do you think that there's a way that we could start exploring like the IDs or proper rights tracking right from the source where it's being created? Do you think you'd be able to walk into a distributor and say, hey, like, I will release this with you, but there has to be proper tracking? Or do you think you'd get pushback?
So this is where something like Beatport comes into play, or a distributor. I think distributors out there are the ones that need to have a system built in that automatically creates, instead of just creating an ISRC code, you're also creating something on the blockchain. Beatport can very easily do that, right? Like anything that's uploaded automatically gets created into a NFT, and then that can be tracked. Now, the connections of it, where the interoperability between what's being played at a club or what's being played in an elevator, connecting back to, say, something like Shazam that can tell you this is being played at one point. That's the tricky part. I'm too dumb
without
for that.
having to write, you know, or show up with hardware into a club to just start tracking music, right?
But that can become an industry standard within seconds. That can become a chip that goes into a Pioneer DJ system or a microphone inside a club that constantly records the exact same way that we record with our phone. This way, Lady Gaga is not getting the money for the music that's getting played at Berghain, right? Because you know most of these licensing deals in the clubs, they collect the top 10% of Billboard collects music that's getting played by really underground DJs playing underground music that was made by bedroom DJs. I've always been against that, and every single artist that releases on Omnidisc, I constantly tell them, you know, let's try and think different. Let's try and see how we can create NFTs off of your music. So something like Nina Protocol is one of the people that I'm talking to, because that's exactly what they do. But what you want is full interoperability between all chains, because you know, if it goes on Ethereum, or if it goes on Polkadot, or if it goes on Ori chain, or if it goes on whatever system, you want it to be super interoperable where it can all be read.
Precisely.
Yeah.
No, but good on you for really trying to stick with those artists who are thinking differently about it. Because again, if we don't fix it at the source, you're dealing with people at King Street who bought the rights from this person that were on paper 30 years ago, and will never get, you know, no problems will be fixed at that point, really.
Yeah.
David, I wanted to ask you about some of the other initiatives that Beatport is pushing as well, too. I know you have Beatport Next, which is, you know, assisting younger artists to, you know, grow and expand their careers. There's Beat Portal. I mean, there's a lot of things that you guys are working on. What do you think is, you know, as far as today's conversation, was the most exciting for you?
Hands up if you know what Beatport Next is.
Okay, we got it.
Okay, I'm gonna have to explain these, right? So Beatport Next is our next generation program. It's trying to find the next emerging talent globally. It's been really successful. I don't know if these are household names yet, but we had Nia Archives, who is a UK jungle drum and bass producer, who blew up afterwards. We had I Had a Dream, who's now working with Skrillex. But we basically tried to create a gateway entry point for artists to get exposure and for us to help support them and find opportunities for them. So we choose a selection of 8 to 12 artists every year, highly vetted through our teams. We all have a vote. It's a bit like a DAO actually, but maybe less chaotic. And we come up with a decision on who's going to make the program. And yeah, it's been really successful. I love that program because we have to look at what's coming through, otherwise we're gonna die. Like, I mean, we could support John Digweed and Sasha, and like absolutely, they have their place in the zeitgeist of the time and history and what they've built beforehand. And we have to, you're friends with some of my heroes as well. Like, we adore those people.
Who's next?
But who's next? And it
Literally.
has to be this intergenerational exchange, right? Where that generation talk to the new generation and give them all the shit that I did wrong, do it this way, and also like learn from them. It's like a two-way conversation. So I love that. I think that's really cool. And then part of that, what we're looking at is how we can actually do more experimentation with that program in Web3, because that's the gateway, that's the entry point before they become the Danny Dazes and before they become like bigger names or more established artists, right? To then do test projects and see what happens, but thoughtfully. So I love that one. There's a bunch of other things that we do.
You guys have quite the suite of products and platforms
Lots
these
of
days.
products and platforms, and but I think particularly shining light on that, because whatever we can all do to actually just not be old people and and stuck in our ways, like actually use younger people as the source of inspiration.
I mean, we are especially when it's dealing with house and techno, we're standing on the backs of giants, right? I mean, there's the people that inspired probably all three of us to do what we do today. We have some mutual friends in common. These are the greats that I've looked up to, and delighted to call them friends. But if you had to start over, today was day one, you're producing music, you feel like you're getting it. Do you think you would take a different approach than what you did in 2001 when you were first starting to release records?
I wouldn't know how to do anything different. Because I usually, the music that I make and the way that I think as an artist, I just want to come from the heart. Being that now we're living in a new tech world, I would definitely try and understand my way with AI. I would understand my way with how to use it, and the crypto side of things and the blockchain side of things. Being that I started in 2001, I mean, we didn't have I had flip phones back then, so we're kind of living in a different world now. But yeah, I would do everything exactly the same, except try and understand how to use AI in a better way, and yeah, the crypto space.
I'm with you on that, and I think one of my bigger questions today, and I had sent you guys some stuff in advance, and I did want to assess it. It's the elephant in the room, right? When it comes to music and music creation, AI is starting to kind of get really fucking good. And I hate to say it. And I personally utilize it within my music making process. Has it become to a point where I could type in a prompt and say, give me a 140 BPM breaks track and make it sound like Danny Daze? I mean, thankfully, no. We still have some job security left, but it is a helpful tool. I find I use it as a creation product, right? Like, maybe give me an idea that I'm not necessarily thinking of. Maybe flip these chords in a different way. So I do appreciate it from that point, but it's getting kind of scary good. But if we look back at the history of dance music, especially since 2001, the bar, like the barrier for entry, has gotten lower and lower and lower and lower. Yeah. And not necessarily in a bad way. It's made it more inclusive, but it's made it so that there's probably a lot more average sounding music out there. But I do think AI is going to have its really important place. I mean, what are your thoughts on the way it's shaping not only the creation process, but other things within, maybe like we were touching on, rights management and tracking and such?
So I make music with it, actually. So I use things like Suno. I master with it, and
Lander?
and I extract stems with it.
Personal favorite.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's a tool to step your game up, not to be lazy. So most humans, I think, tend to want to use things for the lazy side of things. I use it in a way where it's like, okay, this just gave me an edge, and I've been making music and extracting stems from stuff that I would have never been able to play. I would have never played this violin.
Finally get that clean vocal out.
Yes, yes. That's wild. Like the stuff that Fader is doing, where I can go into old records and just extract a snare.
Pull out a bass
And it's just the
line.
nastiest snare. You're like, there we go. I got the Fine Young Cannibals snare.
Finally.
Yeah, finally
With a good
got
gate
the
verb on it.
Yeah, it's. I think that's where it's gonna head. And again, I think it's for. My biggest fear is that DSPs are going to start using their own native AI bullshit in order to
Coming for you.
completely circumvent humans. That's where we're fucked.
I think it's a real substantiated fear. I mean, there's a lot of that happening.
It's happening.
It's already
happening.
it already
Spotify
is.
has
Yeah,
been-
but
Spotify
it's
has been
like
caught.
it's like saying this AI generation lost it again. Nope. Can you make a painting that looks like Rembrandt, right? Like a Rembrandt painting. I think humans tend to lean towards what humans made. And if people know that this was made by AI, it doesn't matter how perfect it is. There's a reason why people are like Autechre or whoever it is, Square Pusher or me or whatever, say, damn, this was produced by a human being. This person put time and energy into
There's
something.
soul in it. I mean, it
Yes.
sounds so cliche, but there's
No,
soul.
you feel it, you understand it, and no matter, I mean, it's going to come up to the artist to sign off and say, I produced this, which then you're a terrible artist, you know, and you can figure out who those artists are pretty quick.
I've got a question for Danny, actually.
Yeah, please, let's keep the roundtable going.
Just on that, I mean, how long do you spend producing music? Would you say one track from start to finish without the AI and other technology, like 2 years ago?
Yeah, the crazy part is some songs take 3 hours, some songs take a month. It depends on, I mean, I just released an album called Blue that took me, between the production and the planetarium show, took me 3 years. But I produced 100 records and I narrowed it down to 19 and made it a story. And I really wanted to get extremely intricate with it. But some like I did a song called Ready to Go that I produced on a plane. By the time I landed, I played it out. It took 2 hours. I'm like, damn, this is a bomb. 2 hours.
And
on a
those are the
plane.
ones you
So-
like 2 years
so-
later,
Yeah,
too.
it's
And
back to basics.
And my question then after that is, what part of that process did you hate?
None of it.
Exactly.
None of
right?
it. Yeah.
So AI cannot interrupt that, right? Because your take on Suno is really interesting. Because I'm imagining you're doing it for layers, or
I'm extracting
that's
layers,
sick.
and
Yeah.
then you don't even know where those. And then I'm reversing samples and then stretching them out in time and like time stretching.
no, that's how to use it, right?
That's how you use
But
it.
to go
Yeah.
back to that point about how long he spends making music, he's using it as this creative co-pilot. I mean, not to coin Microsoft's already coined term, but like that's cool, right? And that's like you can have a choir of 100 people doing a 7-tier melody, you know, like that's great. But like saying, write me Daft Punk's next tune, you know, like that's shit.
I think
Well,
that's
we
the
are
way
gonna-
most people are going to go, where it's make me a song that sounds like this. But if you can then go and use a stem extractor, and then that's what I've done. I've taken violins and I've turned violins and then sampled those violins, things that, and they have these artifacts in it right now because the tech is not really there. That
Especially
those
when you do the
artifacts are,
SEM separation.
those artifacts are actually part of what I like.
Yeah,
You know,
agreed.
I bring them out with EQs and I'm like, this is,
And we don't have to put a
bullshit.
big
I
crusher
mean,
on
that's
after.
why vinyl is nice, right?
Exactly,
Because of the
yeah.
crackle.
Well, I agree. I mean, I use it in a very similar way. Like we could get to, create in a whole different way. Like you said, you could pull a stem out of one song. I mean, I even go to the point where I'll take an acapella out, I'll flip it in on another like voice changer on like Kit's AI, and then I'll start slapping that back into Udio to like generate something else. But inevitably, I think what this point of this conversation is leading to is there are going to be people that abuse it. It's just going to happen. Because like you said, a lot of artists are out to, one, chase fame, and they're not in it for the same reasons that we are, because we love it and we love the music creation process. But two, people like doing the easy thing, and that's not necessarily the right way. It's not our perspective, but it is going to happen. And I think that leads me to a question for you about Beatport. the massive influx of music that's coming into Beatport, right? What do we get? Like 100,000 new tracks monthly?
I think it's more than that actually, but yeah, that's a good benchmark. 100,000 a month.
Do you think that Beatport is thinking forward a little bit? I know you were kind of mulling this over in your head earlier, but like, the system could be gamed, right? And I think you've seen this as well too. Somebody pops up on Beatport, you've never heard of them. They get a top 10, and they're off on tour, and they're making $30K in booking fees, but they've probably barely ever been in a studio. They don't know how to load samples into an MPC 2000 XL. So what do you think Beatport is doing to either, let's say, reward the people that are in it for the long haul and in it because they love it and in it because they make genuine music? And do you think you could see the difference on the platform of the people who are just trying to be flash in the pan and game the system?
This is probably the hardest question of the night.
And it's like a 7-parter too, so I definitely didn't make it easy.
The first thing I'd say is the site itself is actually human curated. There's no AI recommendation system. All of the music is front paged or highlighted comes from a massive team of curators specialized in genres. What was the question again? What are we doing with technology to make sure that people can't game the system?
Well, yeah, you answered the first part well. Like, what are we doing to reward the people that are here?
So I think in terms of meritocracy, and this is actually like a key point that I would love us to all, we're talking about utopic ideas earlier, but meritocracy in the creation of art and the creation of music. So as in being celebrated because you're actually good rather than how many Instagram followers you have is like really in my DNA. So on the front page of Beatport, a technological shift is we don't use AI, we use humans for a change. Now you will see over the next 6 months or so some AI recommendation personalization systems being rolled out. They'll be tested and developed, but we will keep that core network of curators. They've also helped us expand and keep our ear into new genres. So we had Amapiano, which blew up, is a genre on Beatport. Brazilian funk, I think it's baile / Brazilian funk. I think someone told me that you have to say Brazilian funk now though, because baile is like tied to the favela like origin, but the actual output is anyway. But yeah, exactly. So that's coming up. Like our curators are listening, and they're not like trained on lots of the internet history and what happened and that type of thing. But there are some good use cases for recommendation systems, which can also help uncover. Like if I listen to an artist similar to Danny Daze, and I saw the AI recommendation system recommends that I listen to Danny Daze, that's a good recommendation, right? And that helps me. If you're a DJ, one of your like basic jobs is to dig, right? So to make that a little bit easier and give you shit that you can listen to in the vast sea of music is actually kind of like a time saver. So I think that's one side of it, and then let's keep it at that for now because it's
I think it's very well said, but the main takeaway that I'm getting from that is first line of defense, humans, right? The people who work for your platform, the people that work for Beatport that are saying like, wow, okay, Danny just put out a really good album. Let's highlight that. Let's feature that. And it means something. And every time I get shine on a genre page or you get a hype pick, still means something. It doesn't feel like an auto-generated answer to my hard work as an artist. So, I'm really appreciative of the platform, and I think it's done wonders for the dance music world.
Started Denver, by the way.
Yeah, hometown, baby. Show some hometown love, everybody. There we go. All right. I'm going to give you guys, this will be our closing question, but, we could look at it as a softball, or we could look at it as an extremely complex question. Given how clued in you guys are on newer tech, evolving tech, and Web3, and this is broadly speaking, this is not something I gave you guys in advance, what do you, tangibly do we want to see next, right? Like a big theme of today's panel talks was like Web3's undelivered promises. Like we're artists, right? Like it's been promised to us either through your platform or through, you know, the tech space in general. This is all going to change, right? You say it, I say it, I appreciate it, and I feel it. But we almost haven't seen a radical shift yet, except maybe on the AI side with music creation. I feel like that's been a big dynamic shift if used correctly. But what do you think tangibly we could look forward to next as artists and platforms?
I think as an artist, I would want to see tech circumvent greed. And that is, for artists and the Web3 world, our way in. That's pretty much it. Like that's why I've been, since 2011, I saw this, I'm like, okay, there's this thing called BTC that then Ethereum started, and then I'm like, okay, a lot of things can be done within a space that is permissionless, and nobody has the ability to say this belongs here or it doesn't belong here. That's my biggest thing, is just to circumvent greed and circumvent gatekeepers, and yeah, basically just go from there. Yeah.
There we go. Very well
Cheers.
said. Preach.
So it got me thinking about. So we work with Pixlinks. I don't know if everybody knows Pixlinks, but they're a deadmau5, one of deadmau5's many companies, but specifically in Web3. I spoke to Inder, who runs Pixlinks, a couple of weeks ago, and he is like such a legitimately good human. We were talking about, like, you know, what could we do next, what are the opportunities, and his first point was like, get artists paid fairly, right? How can we get there? And I was like, fuck, it's so simple actually when you put it like that. But that, like, the Ant is an artist, Danny is an artist, I'm not an artist, but I understand the struggles that they go through in making records and spending however many hours or weeks or 2 hours on a plane making a track, you know, to output their craft and then not be compensated fairly for it is mental. And then, you know, you might play some gigs, may not even be interested in DJing, they want to focus on production. It's like, how can you, I think this is me going back to utopic ideas, but
I mean, that's why we're here.
But this is the most important thing, right? Because if it all ends up AI generated music and artists don't see the value in it and can't make a career out of it or even pay the rent, like Just Ed, I don't know if you know the DJ Just Ed. Yeah.
No.
I played with him. I used to DJ in Berlin, and that guy couldn't even pay his rent that month, which is insane for like such a legend. So that's the biggest problem, in my opinion, in music. And I think figure that out first, because I think everything else sort of branches off from that or channels into that. Because if the artists are paid, it starts to create like a sustainable economy and system that actually is worthwhile.
I mean, there's getting paid, and there's also getting paid on time, right? Like, you've seen tracks pop off, get played on BBC Radio 1, wherever, you know that there's money coming. I mean, I always use this as an example. You could get famous and be on tour and not afford hotel rooms or gas to get to the next gig. Because what a lot of people don't know is we're 18 months in the rears, as they called it.
Right. I genuinely think there's going to be a point where artists are going to get paid per block.
Into it.
Yeah, like per block that's produced, it's just going to keep growing.
And microtransactions.
I don't make money off of my royalties or anything that comes in. I have to gig, and I do 100 shows a year. That's 200 flights a year. I'm exhausted.
I bet.
And you know, back in the day, people were getting paid and making their money off of vinyl, and touring as well. But now again, greed comes into play, where things like Spotify take over and take 99% of the money. It's absolutely nuts. And Web3 is the route to circumvent that.
Agreed.
So, yeah.
I mean, very well said, gentlemen. I actually do, if we have a couple minutes, I'd love to kick it if there's any 1 or 2 questions from the floor, if anybody has anything they would love to bring up to these 2 dynamic gentlemen. Okay. Do we have questions? All right. My back's a little bit out, so do we have an extra mic? No, I'll hobble over. I got it. Where are we? All right.
Hey, check me out. Hey, so what y'all thinking? One of my people, they was dealing with Biggie Smalls' mom and asking about recreation of like dead artists. So curious on what y'all thoughts on that, because
That's wild. Yeah, the recreation of his voice, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, we were in productions for like basically.
Yeah, that's for record labels to talk about. I have that's for you to talk about. I have no idea.
Sorry, are you doing this? Are you doing this, or you're working with a company that is doing this?
Nah, I'm working with a company. I work. I do stuff with like Azos and stuff like that. We do like green energy stuff. Like nothing to do with music. But music side, like I deal with like people like Nitty. I don't know if you ever heard of like Frank Nitty. Look him up. He's one of my friends.
But I think that brings up a really good question. Let me see if I could just slightly reframe it. Like, what are your thoughts? I know, Danny, you were saying, like, I'm out, like, let the labels deal with it. But
who knows what you do with that? Do you?
In terms of
the likeliness and your IP?
Yeah, so IP is another one, actually, for blockchain. And Pixlinks, again, I have been speaking to them about IP, and they're doing a project with Black Mirror. I don't know if you guys saw that series. It was on Netflix.
Oh, with the TV show.
Black Mirror TV series. Ender has done a project with the IP of Black Mirror. So he has the license to then fuck with new ideas in that space.
Well, I suppose it goes back to this, like, immutable identity.
Yeah.
And if we could verify... we could verify who you are on the blockchain, you can never change that identity. So, interesting point to bring up.
That's where DIDs come into play.
Precisely.
I do think it is like a bit scary, though, when you think about...
Absolutely scary.
You know, it's like Stanley Kubrick has his family own his whole estate, so they can tell you whether you can or can't use anything from his archive. And you have to go through his family. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel like that's like a good way to do it, is like if the family say yes, cool. If they say no, all right. Because it's freaky. Like
it is. And probably more of a reason to maybe push back against these major labels signing these 360 deals or just owning more of you than they should as an artist, right? We got another question over here.
Yeah, the 360. I mean, Michael Nash has been doing that for years at Warner Brothers, but that's a whole other.
That's a whole other.
That's a whole other topic. Two-parter. One part is, Danny. These guys, Aura AI, they're taking catalogs, running through LLMs, spitting out specific kind of sound. I was with will.i.am a few weeks ago at CES, and he's created a black IP kind of as an AI agent to kind of. Fed in all of their content, voice, and all that, and now that can be a band member. So what do you think, obviously, on the B2B side of like, it's Danny D, and then it's Danny D2, and you're able to kind of play kind of side by side with your AI agent? What do you think about that?
I mean, the AI agent world right now, unfortunately, took a nasty dump because it's kind of looked at as a glorified meme. But for me, it's actually one of the biggest things that's going to happen within the next 3 or 4 years. He was speaking about Ori, which is Ori Chain. They've built a whole ecosystem that is just AI-based. They're in L1 Oracle. And for me, I'm most excited about AI agents because I do think, for example, I'm trying to build one now that's going to help me with travel. That's going to help me if I don't have frequent flyer miles on Delta, it'll automatically do it for me.
Wow.
And if I ask, okay, I want to go to London on the best date where there's usually no sun, it'll automatically say, Never. Yeah. No, or it'll say, okay, July 6th, this is the best time for you to do your flights, and it'll do everything for you.
Here's the points, and here's the routing.
Yeah, so on the AI agent tip, I was talking to a friend of mine here about doing your taxes, right? So as a traveling DJ, there's things that I need to write off on tax, and if you can immediately have this connected to your credit card, it's automatic. And I do think that's where most things within the next 2 or 3 years when it comes to the AI side and AI agents are going to go. But again, most people are using these agents as a glorified meme, and they're trying to make money. So, you know, the DGen world, everything that happened with Pump Fun and virtuals and you know, agents.land, it's a way where it's very easy to overlook the actual use case of what actually is going on. I hope that with this government that we have that's super pro-friendly, we're actually gonna see proper regulation that allows for all of us to understand and be like, okay, this is where we all belong. This is all real now, and there's no setbacks.
And here's the clarity, and this is how we could actually move forward and use these things.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good question. I mean,
I don't know if I answered the question. Did I? Not really?
That's enough.
No?
My
Yeah.
only thought.
On the beat, I wouldn't be able to answer that too much, being that I'm just like a moron artist that just wants to travel and get my flyer miles. You know?
My only thought on that is, I think for Danny, well, it's what is the output, right? If the output is trained on existing creative works, it's going to put out more music like those creative works. So is there innovation in that? Probably not. Like will.i.am will come up with new ideas, and Danny will, the guy's like testing out technology and testing new ideas and trying new things. It's going to be caught. It's going to be trapped in its own life cycle, I think.
So no
to
innovation.
a certain degree, and then you could, if you were trying to sell it in some way, I guess you could update the like what it's trained on, so the capacity, so throw new ideas in there. But yeah, I'm not sure about that. Don't think. I think it's like cool, but I think from like a real creative, this is moving things forward. It feels a bit static.
I think like anything, it's going to be how we utilize the technology, right? I think that feels like my biggest takeaway from this whole convo is like, how do we implement the AI without cheapening the experience of electronic music? How do we, maybe use AI agents to increase your productivity without just having it pump out music for you that's just a slight variation of your last track? So again, it's kind of like the beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and it's a sword that could be wielded both ways. So either way, I really appreciate the time from both of you guys today.
Anthony, we got one more question over here.
We got one more question.
cool.
Beautiful. All right.
Hey, gentlemen. I was wondering, like, AI is very, right now, generative. It's not going to create a new genre of music. You have jazz, you have rock and roll. It's not going to create a new one. It's going to be creating your beautiful song. What about artists that exist right now, like Hatsune Miku, who's been selling out Madison Square Garden, touring all over the world, opening up for Lady Gaga, Pharrell Williams, all these people. But it is just a synthesizer voice. It's not necessarily AI, but it's somebody that created this voice that is now a AI image, and she's, quote unquote, performing on these massive stages. How does that necessarily compete with something like the AI, or even something that you guys do, which is just producing music?
I think we're screwed, man. I think humans are screwed. It's a scary thing because everybody now is living in these 15-second increments where we're just scrolling, we're just doom scrolling. People, I think we're going to get back to the point where we want human-to-human interaction. Sure, the novelty of a data-driven thing that was prompted to sing a certain way is cute for now, but we're always going to want to see an artist. We're always going to want to see an actual human up there doing something. Again, you can go back and say, I want a Rembrandt painting. But if a computer did it, who cares? That's my pipe dream, at least, that humans to humans interact more. And I think it's actually happening where, you know, I'm doing events where there's no phones, and not even, it's not even something that I'm saying you have to do. Kids nowadays, the younger generation, the 20-year-olds are leaving their phones behind, and they're going to flip phones. That's for a reason, because they're listening to the old timers say, yo, back in the day, this was like this. So yeah, we're living in this parallel world where one doesn't necessarily have to kind of jump into the other side, but I'm definitely using the AI side in order to help the other world, or at least my art. Yeah.
I think that we're all really lucky. House and techno, the people who built this are essentially still around, right? Like, you interact with them, they're still there. There will be no replacement for a Danny Daze set. There will be no replacement for how your Beatport team will curate good music to bring it to sell to the DJ community. So, you know, for your place in the music industry, like, we're really grateful for you guys coming here and sharing your stories with us and your perspectives. So, from Guest List Plus One, we all thank you for showing up today. Give a big round of applause for these two gentlemen. Thank you, guys.